They're not looking for love, they're looking for libidinal solutions. You thought it was love, and that's not your fault. You responded to the gaze, you opened your heart, you rearranged your inner world around the possibility of finally being seen, known, and held. And in those early days, under the spell of compliments, the long talks, the uncanny way they got you, you felt something that might have just been the closest thing to hope. But that feeling wasn't mirrored, it was studied. Because narcissistic abuse doesn't begin with cruelty, it begins with attunement. Not real attunement, but simulated mirroring. And it's not driven by intimacy or truth or mutual becoming. It's driven by need, specifically by the need for libidinal solutions. They're looking for function. They want solutions to unbearable internal states, and they want you to provide them. This is what fuels the narcissistic economy. They are not evaluating your soul, they are calculating whether your beauty, status, empathy, youth, loyalty, devotion, or sacrifice will serve their internal regulation. And when you stop serving that purpose, the calculation changes. You are not devalued because you became worse. You are devalued because your function collapsed. Insecurity seeks sex or proof of attraction. Shame seeks dominance. Abandonment anxiety seeks obsessive loyalty. Emptiness seeks your fantasy. Self loathing seeks your collapse. You are not loved. You are measured. You were not chosen because you were wanted. You were chosen because you solved something inside of them. The narcissist does not engage in love, they engage in regulation. You are chosen for how you reflect their desired image back to them, for how you submit to their projected need, for how you shape yourself to fit the hole that they never name. And you do it not because you're weak, but because you mistook their survival mechanisms for intimacy. Every interaction is negotiation for supply, and supply comes in many forms: sexual validation, social status, blind loyalty, emotional service, the comfort of having you collapse under their rejection, only to come back again and again with your arms wide and your gaze softened. They're not looking for a person, they are looking for a stabilizer. When they looked at you, they weren't seeing a whole human being, they were scanning for utility. Will you soothe them when they spiral? Will you forgive them when they vanish? Will you reflect their greatness? Will you regulate their shame? Will you accept their contempt as woundedness? Will you remain while they erase you? This is not partnership. This is object acquisition. In input terms, this is where your subjectivity begins to erode. You are no longer a person. You are a solution, and the longer you try to prove your worth, the more you dissolve inside their fantasy. This is why survivors report feeling emptied, hollow, deflated, ghosted, mimicked, and finally discarded. Because you were turned into a utility, a mirror of their lost mother, a balm for their broken structure, a living, breathing bandage. And when you begin to ask for reciprocity, when you show signs of exhaustion, when your smile tightens or your gaze questions, when your body aches or your soul starts leaking out of your eyes, you are no longer a safe container. They don't discard you because you failed them. They discard you because you felt. Your feelings disrupt the fantasy. They don't want intimacy. They want optics. Are you hot enough, devoted enough, damaged enough to stay? Exceptional enough to enhance their story, passive enough to tolerate the inversion. You're not a partner, you are a profile enhancement, a fantasy enhancer, a self object, an emotional plug in. Our wider culture supports this collapse. Our culture teaches us that beauty equals value, youth equals relevance, intelligence equals dominance, sex equals connection, money equals love. All of it is backwards. All of it is libidinal. All of it is collapse. The narcissist collects these currencies not because they value them, but because they must be seen having them. You are not valued for what you are, but for what you represent to others. Your presence becomes a billboard for their false self. And when your humanity rises, when your voice shakes, your eyes dim, or your heart begins to harden, the image breaks, the illusion falters, the solution fails. So they move on, or they rage, or they ghost, or they discard, or they smear, or they start again with someone anew. But none of this is because you were too much or not enough. It is because you stopped functioning as a libidinal solution. And here's where your collapse begins. You're not just grieving a person, you are grieving the version of yourself that existed only inside their fantasy. That version, the one who was idealized, the one who was seen, the one who was the one, was never held, only observed, only constructed. When they vanish, it feels like the world disappears. Your worth dissolves. Your memories burn. Your body reacts as though death has occurred. Cortisol spikes. The nervous system flares. The internal gate slams shut. You panic. You fawn. You perform. You try to get back inside the story. This is not desperation. This is collapse. MPIT identifies this as the death of the projected self, the one built around their gaze. When the gaze is withdrawn, your sense of being collapses, not because you were dependent, but because your selfhood was never mirrored authentically. It was simulated. You fell in love with an algorithm, a predictive model built to match your hope, not your reality. The narcissist does not do this just to be cruel. They do it to survive. They are lost inside their own regulatory system. You were a stabilizer. Now you are a threat. Not because you hurt them, and maybe you did, but because you held up a mirror for too long. In their eyes, you became the persecutory object, the shadow mother, the shaming gaze, the proof of their inner void. And so, in their psychic logic, you must be punished, rejected, erased, annihilated, and replaced. But make no mistake, you were never in the relationship, you were holding it. This is why the pain feels so disproportionate. Because you were not just losing a partner, you were carrying the entire shared fantasy. In recovery, you must shift from mirror to subject. You must let go of being a solution and reclaim being a self. You must stop scanning for their gaze. You start tracking your own. You stop performing safety. You start building it. You stop craving intensity. You start tolerating reality. And you grieve, not just for them, but for the you that bent, broke, dissolved, and mirrored their world for so long that your own became unrecognizable. This grief is sacred because it marks the return of your authorship. The culture around you may still be inverted. You may still be surrounded by people looking for regulation, not a relationship. But now you have something else: sight. You can see when someone is not looking for you, but for a solution. You can feel the difference between being desired and being scanned. You can track when your nervous system begins to shape itself into the outline of someone else's wounds. You can stop. This is the moment the narcissistic economy fails because you stop trading. You stop being a service provider, a fantasy co-signer, a self-object. You stop being the mirror and you begin again, not as a reflection, but as a sovereign, embodied, boundary anchored, affect literate, self defining human being. You're not a libidinal solution. You are a life. And life in all its mess, grief, contradiction, rage, longing, and hope is not something to be acquired. It is something to be lived. Peace out.